But where does Harry Maguire compare among the players signed that have cost in total $1 billion since 2018? Let's take a listen.
Rob, sorry, this one falls on you because this is probably going to be the most discussed one. Harry Maguire, 87 million. We're not forgetting that price tag anytime soon. Of course, players don't have, any say in their price tag, but what do you think about this one?
Yeah, you're right. It's important to say at this point that the players don't decide their price tags, but he is the most expensive defender in the history of football, and with it becomes a certain level of expectation. He's not met it, in my opinion. He was very, very close to leaving in the summer for 30 million, which would have been a massive loss in terms of the fee that United paid. I would say at best, it's average, but it's bordering on bad.
Okay, let me just let you chime in on this one, because I know you answer. What do you think? Average, at best, but borderline bad?
I think he's been average, Harry Maguire. I think people forget how much of I won't say a good player he was in his first couple of years, but he did have an impact in his first couple of seasons, and it just went bad the last 18 months. So I think the last 18 months have been bad, bordering on shocker. But I think generally, overall, he's been average. And I think he's beginning to bounce back this season in the sense that he is becoming a bit of a leader again. So maybe losing the captaincy has put him on course to be average, which isn't saying a lot, but that's where we're at.
Okay, 31 transfers since 2018, and all are discussed in depth at ESPN FC on YouTube. Any surprises in there?
No. I think that United fans, if they're asked to rate the 31 signings that they've seen since 2018, will know that the bulk of them have just not been good enough. I think that probably the biggest surprise is that we found one that was great and a couple that were good. The recruitment of players since 2018 and probably over the last decade has been really, really poor. And that's why Man United are in the mess that they're in right now. I mean, it's all very well we're talking about Harry Maguire and a little bit of a mini resurgence for him. But the team are still struggling. They're struggling in the Champions League group. They're struggling to qualify for the Champions League next year. The reason behind that is poor recruitment.
Ali, do you think anything will be different now that Jim Ratcliffe's coming in with his 25% stake? He's getting rid of the CEO. They've employed on an interim basis the person who was involved in getting Ratcliffe's deal with the Glazers over the line. When it comes to recruitment and other things, do we see much of a difference short term ahead of this January transfer window, do you reckon?
Well, first of all, just going back to that video, there were a lot of backhanded compliments there for Harry Maguire. There was a lot of sort of, all right, he's been great, but average. Look, I think whenever there is a shakeup in ownership and there is a change, the incoming person is going to want to put their input and their hands all over the club. And whatever organization that you're taking over, you feel like you need to have an impact. Now, from what we hear from guys like Rob and Mark Ogden is that while the concerning parts about Manchester United is what we get to see on the field, there is also a need to update the infrastructure of the club. And so then that I think it's a decision that you need to make. What do you address first? And what long-term is going to help you to actually become the club that you want to become and go back to the level of success that you've had in the past? And you have to have the right infrastructure of the club. You have to be able to have building blocks. And then once you have building blocks, then you can concern yourself about the recruitment of players. If you don't have the right infrastructure, then we go into this conversation of £1 billion and most of it is being thrown away. You don't want to go down that path again. So if I were anybody who's coming into this club with a whole bunch of money and saying, okay, I am now a decision maker of this club or part of the decision-making group, this is what I want and this is what I think is a priority. Infrastructure of the club, then we concern ourselves with the recruitment of players.
Rob, is one of the issues here as well, not that when you sign someone like Harry Maguire, and as you say in the video, and you've said it before, it's not his fault. He doesn't decide the amount that is paid for him. But commensurate to that, you do have the wages of someone who you've just spent 80 million on. So West Ham might have wanted him, but he might not want to have gone, or they couldn't have afforded him. So is it a case of they need to get players out before they can get players in January, or does the investment from Jim Ratcliffe mean that they can spend even more when it comes to the January transfer window?
No, I mean, they tried to spend more in the summer and were restricted by the financial fair play concerns that they had, and that will still be true in a January transfer window. So unless there is, relatively major outgoings from the squad, they won't be able to do an awful lot in terms of bringing players in. I mean, there's obviously still room for manoeuvre, and maybe you sign a loan player here, or do a short-term deal to the end of the season, so that there are options for United in January. But if fans are expecting some big sort of overhaul in Jim Ratcliffe's first transfer window, then they're mistaken. That's just not going to happen. The other issue that's tied to this is that we get sort of caught up in talking about Jim Ratcliffe as the new guy who's going to sort of oversee this massive overhaul. Well, it has to be remembered that he's only buying 25%. That the Glazers are still going to be majority owners. So the first key question that needs to be answered is how much influence Jim Ratcliffe is going to have, and how's that going to look inside the club. He wants to take over part of the sporting side. He wants to put his own guys in to oversee recruitment, because one of the reasons why he's there at all is because he's got such a dim view of the way that United have spent money over the last 10 years. But it's really kind of an unprecedented situation that you've got a minority stakeholder almost calling some of the shots. So until we really know how this is all going to work out, it's very, very hard to distinguish what the future of Man United is going to look like. I think at the moment, United fans are quite disappointed that they're not having a fresh start. They wanted new owners. They wanted this huge investment to come in. Initially, that's not going to happen. For them, though, that this is almost like a glimmer of hope, and not much more than that, a glimmer of hope that this is a fresh start for Man United, that further down the line, maybe the Glazers will be bought out in their entirety, and there can be a fresh start with fresh people at all levels of the club, and they can start, acting as big a club as they certainly think they are. Because for the last 10 years, United like to think that they're sit alongside Real Madrid and Barcelona and Bayern Munich. That's just not true. They're nowhere near the level of those clubs, and really they should be. And that's what this investment from Jim Ratcliffe it is a start of. It should be the start of Man United realising that potential that they have.
Yeah, that's a good point, because one of the key things that's been a problem at Manchester United and Chelsea to an extent hasn't been the money. It's been who's identifying the talent, because a lot of them are getting it very wrong.